it might be worth spending a certain amount on customer A, but not on customer B. And so that's something you've got to get your head around as well, is understanding not just how much you're able to spend to have a profitable relationship.
I had an aha moment when I looked at the margin contribution of our truck drivers and luxury car owners. It was a wow. My take on this is that you can't move the needle unless you change things. You can't change things unless you have ideas, but you can't have lucrative ideas unless you have proper data. Hello everyone and welcome to a brand new episode of the CVO Live. The purpose of CVO Live is to help you understand what's all about customer value optimization and what is all this transition from optimizing for acquisition and conversion to optimizing the whole customer journey. And it's my pleasure and honor and joy to have here one of the best optimizers on this planet, which is Johann Van Tonder. Hello Johann and welcome to the show.
Valentin, thanks for that introduction. It's not one that I would have used, but thank you very much. It's good to be here.
Yeah, so why don't we start by letting our audience know what makes you excited about customer lifetime value optimization?
Let's just get all the terminology out there. I work in an industry called CRO. And what you're talking about there is something I'd say you would abbreviate as CVO or. And there are all these terms doing the rounds, and there's this endless debate. I think there's a huge overlap between these various terms, and maybe we'll talk about that. What makes me excited about it, Valentin, is as a business owner and as somebody who's spent more than 10 years with the responsibility of driving growth, real growth in various businesses, and now in an agency environment for clients. The only thing that I've come to understand that really works is understanding your customers and understanding your profile of customers, because different customers are worth different amounts to you. They have different values to you. And if you get on top of that, that's when you really able to start realizing meaningful growth.
Yeah. So Johann, you are running one of the most successful agencies on this planet, and I think it's better for everyone to know that you are the CEO and founder at AWA Digital. You are running in South Africa and in the UK. You work with the large enterprise clients, with retailers. You've learned a lot. Why don't you give us, let's say, some insights towards how you've landed into the optimization space at the very beginning?
Yeah, my journey isn't typical. So I've been with AWA Digital for 10 years. The agency is about that old. I started off in corporate, and in corporate I was working in a large global internet investment firm, and the unit that I was running was sort of a labs environment. We ended up with a number of e-businesses, and this is a good number of years ago. At that stage, there was no blueprint. There wasn't. Everyone was still trying to figure out online business, and I was told to take these businesses and either fix them, kill them, or sell them. And I'd recently done an MBA, and all these beautiful frameworks and theories that I learned in business school. I was able to write really good business plans and make fancy Excels, but staring at an Excel spreadsheet doesn't make growth come true. And what I realized at one point, and we tried everything, was that, and sort of stumbled upon this, that when you get in touch with customers and you understand the world of the customer, and I know that sounds vague, but really it's just asking questions. It's looking at various data points. GA was brand new then, but everyone uses it today. So understanding that behavioral data, but also actually speaking to customers and understanding what they're trying to get done in their lives. What is it that they're trying to get done in their lives that bring them to your business? And what alternatives are they looking at? And what goes wrong in them trying to get that stuff done? And how can you help them? And I was really blown away by the results from just understanding that and acting on that. When I say results, Valentin, I mean dollars and pounds on the top line. I'm not talking about vanity metrics here. It was frankly unexpected, the real results that we started seeing just by doing basics like that. Then I left corporate to work with an internet firm, an e-commerce firm that had a very short runway left. They'd been around for a while. I liked the story. I bought into the story. I thought there was a lot of opportunity there. It was just not being realized. And I, did the maverick entrepreneur thing where I thought, well, can fix this using these same methodologies and principles that I've just spoken about. And, within 2 years, in fact, within 6 months, it was a very different picture. And again, same simple process really that we followed is just speak to your customers, understand how you can improve their experience. I know this sounds fluffy, and maybe we'll get into the detail, but it really comes down to that.
Yeah, I think you're at the right place because I think your experience taught you to focus on customers, and I want to touch a bit this aspect of transition from optimizing the conversion rate to optimizing the whole customer journey in order to improve the customer lifetime value, because there is, I don't know, CRO has I'm coming from the CRO world myself, so I've been playing in this arena for a long time as a former e-commerce entrepreneur, and then as a software as a service entrepreneur, building a CRO tool. So I do know, and I think we're on the same page, that it has some bad connotations. The CRO has been seen like the magic bullet that's going to fix your business like this. And let's talk about a bit about optimization and the difference between a data-driven approach towards improving a business and the one-size-fits-all approach that many CRO gurus are selling on LinkedIn and Twitter.
Yeah, man, don't get me started. It's frustrating, and I distance myself from what is paraded on Twitter as CRO. So I'm relatively inactive on LinkedIn, but make up for it on Twitter. And what you see on Twitter, if you knew nothing about CRO and you landed from a different planet and you just had Twitter as your source, you would walk away from it thinking that CRO is a collection of hacks, what's called CRO hacks on Twitter. So it's a list of best practices, stuff that you should test in the best case, but maybe not even test. Just do it because it's called CRO. It's a CRO hack. And a guy who calls himself a CRO expert has put it out there on Twitter. That's not CRO. That is madness. It's throwing mud against the wall. It is wheel spinning. It is wasting money. And CRO, there is this debate, as you say, about, should we maybe find a different term? And I've kind of made peace with the term, but the way I think about it is more or less what you said there, is using data to inform theories about how you can improve the life of your customer. And we'll get more specific in a moment. And then testing those theories, because the one thing I know after more than 10 years of doing this is you'll be wrong more often than you're right. And so, central to the CRO philosophy is really making better ideas. It's making more better ideas more often. If you look at your financial statements in a year from now, it's the outcome of every decision you make today, tomorrow, the next day, and so on. The more good decision you've made, the more rosier the picture is going to be, and the opposite is also true. And CRO is a way for you to make more good decisions. And that's how I see it.
Yeah. I want to touch a subject which basically brought me to this let's say shift in transitioning from CRO to CVO, which is the fact that if you rely on data, at some point you can improve the conversion rate and decrease the customer lifetime value, therefore to decrease the profitability of a business. And that was for me, it was an aha moment, because my team told me, you know what, look what happened. We were working with the large shoe retailer here in Central and Eastern Europe, and that happened. The conversion rate was higher, the AOV was lower, and when we look at raw data, at downloading all the transactions and looking at the impact not only on that purchase and that transaction, the customer lifetime value was actually going down. And I wanna touch on this subject again, because my personal belief is that we need to look further than the transition time frame, which means, unfortunately, that our optimization efforts are going to be seen in a further time frame. So we are not going to be saying to our customers, that experiment is going well because you can have statistical significance, you can increase conversion rate, but maybe the company is not making more money.
I think that's right. But I think there's a balance, so what you're talking about there is short-termism versus long-termism, right? So, and even just within the boundaries of CRO, before we were expanding it, you could be, so things you can track very precisely in an A/B test, which I think most people are familiar with. You could be hurting, say, revenue. You could increase conversion rate and hurt revenue in the process. I mean, what's the easiest way of driving up your conversion rate? Just drop your prices.
Yeah.
But that's probably not the best thing to be doing. So it starts there. And then to mention another example, you spoke about LTV. So you could increase short-term revenue, but hurt LTV in the long run. You could also be doing damage to your brand. You could be doing damage to your customer experience. Now, these are all fluffy things. It sounds very fluffy, but in the long run, that's what will keep you in business. So I think it's absolutely vital to be talking about all of those things.
Yeah, and another thing which I think it's worth mentioning is that the companies are now transitioning into this optimization mentality, which is great, but the amount of data that they are using, so the data sources are incomplete. And I've been wrong myself. So I've been wasting my life in Google Analytics for hours back in the days, and I've been tracking things only on the visitor side, so only before the purchase, but I wasn't caring about what happened after the purchase, because the growth formula was incomplete. So I was applying the same e-commerce growth formula like everyone: traffic, conversion rate, average order value. But wait a minute. I mean, we also need to look at how much we spend to acquire those customers and how much we are getting from every customer. And now the market is shifting as acquisition is more expensive than ever before.
Well, and then it gets even more nuanced than that, because now you have that portfolio of customers that I spoke about at the top of the call, where you've got different customers being worth different amounts of money to you. And, it might be worth spending a certain amount on customer A, but not on customer B. And so that's something you've got to get your head around as well, is understanding not just how much you're able to spend to have a profitable relationship with a customer, but also divide up your base and find your top customers, the ones that are really profitable, then go out methodically and trying to hunt for more like them. And, that's where you'll spend your money. Then it gets even more nuanced than that, because some businesses rely on acquisition a lot more than others. So some businesses have the benefit of more loyalty. So it's the kind of business that, based on the product they sell, or based on their mix, or based on the customer base, whatever factors come into it, they have that benefit of more customer loyalty, whereas other businesses simply are not made like that. And you can, as the leadership of that business, you can say in the boardroom all you want, we want to improve customer loyalty, but that may not be the mode of your business. And so some businesses rely more on acquisition than others. And so, it's a complex piece, but this is the way you've got to think about it. It starts with the customer, and it starts with understanding the different types of customers, and going after the more profitable ones.
Yeah, I think that's music to my ears. To give some context, maybe our listeners and viewers are already fed up with this story, but I want to share it again. So we were selling car insurance at the very beginning, and we were looking at the margin versus revenue versus the percentage of our customers. And I had an aha moment when I looked at the margin contribution of our truck drivers and luxury car owners. It was a wow. So basically something like Pareto, right? So that was my aha moment. And that's when we've decided to do real-time pricing for customers, for the truck drivers and the luxury car owners, and our conversion rate got through the roof afterwards. So it's all a matter of understanding the customer lifetime value that you are getting, because if you also ponder in not only the initial transaction, but what you are getting down the line, you are paying the customer acquisition cost only once, but you have a huge customer lifetime value. So it's not only about the initial transaction, but it's the ratio between CLV and customer acquisition costs. So when you look at this and apply a model to segment your customers, for instance, I'm a fan, as you know, about RFM. So when you group your customers based on the RFM, you look at the customer lifetime value of those customer segments, you look at the customer acquisition cost for this kind of customers, and then you dive into the data to look at what products are bringing us the best customers, the most loyal one, the ones that have the highest CLV. Then you can start to experiment. And I wanna address a bit this topic of generating experiments or ideas, ideation process, because my take on this is that you can't move the needle unless you change things. You can't change things unless you have ideas, but you can't have lucrative ideas unless you have proper data and relevant data. So it all starts by getting yourself informed about the customers. And as you've said at the beginning of this conversation, what kind of drivers do they have? What kind of progress they are trying to make in their lives by buying your products?
Yeah, and you talk about data and about ideas, and I think we tend to obsess over data. So there's a lot of talk around data, but data in its raw format is useless. It's meaningless. Yeah. It has to. You've got to extract insights from data for it to have meaning, and then you've got insights. But what do you do with those insights? It really is only valuable if you act on those insights. So that's what it's all about. And the bridge between those two, the bridge between the insights and the action, is ideation. It's coming up with ideas. And as you say, ideas are the lifeblood of an organization. It's the lifeblood of optimization, of innovation, of survival even. Because without an idea, what is there? And we've got processes for everything. When I say we, I mean all of us on this call. We have processes for doing analytics, doing analysis. We have processes for, whether we're doing testing, or prioritization, implementing, reporting, all of this stuff we got processes for. We think about it a lot. And yet, very few of us, in my experience, have processes for ideation. It's something we don't think about because we come up with ideas all the time, right? We rely on ideas so much. But because of that, because ideas are so important in our business, that's really what we should be talking about, is how to come up with better ideas. And how you'll be surprised when you start really dig into this, as I've done, the traps and the weak spots that are wired into our brain. We're really naturally quite bad at ideation, and it's worth having a process and backing that, basing that on the science of ideation. So I've spent 4 years now going down this rabbit hole, reading peer-reviewed articles, and scholars over the decades have done a lot of research on this. And of course, my interest is practical. So I try to take those theoretical constructs and what the scholars have had fun with in academic context and try and apply that in a practical setting. And as you can imagine, being an experimenter, I've experimented with a lot of these methodologies. But the one thing I can tell you is you better think about this, and you better have a system, a process for ideation.
I think that totally makes sense. And throwing ideas to your team is not a sport that I'm proud of, but I practiced it for a significant part of my entrepreneurial journey. And thankfully, I had a team that managed to cope with me and to also tell me the ugly truth that some ideas simply don't stand, or you can't simply come up with these ideas. One aspect which I think it's worth mentioning is that in this process of optimization, you have basically these standardized processes which makes a company be in order. And you also have this force of, let's say, this fresh force of creativity that needs to come up with insights from the data. But I want to talk a bit about how you make the culture focus on improving things. Because on one end, we have the large companies which are there, and where, to be honest, the things are moving very, very slow. And now they are in a position, I mean, the whole retail world is being challenged by the new competition, by the new consumer behavior, by the transition to digital channels, by the whatever. And those companies must change. But my question to you is, how can companies be open to change, and how can adopt these new ideas unless they have the right data to support it?
How can they not be open to new ideas, not be open to change? I mean, you've got three options, really. The one is doing nothing. The other one is, well, and let's start there. What happens when you do nothing?
You get the same results.
You get the same results, and your competitors will overtake you, right? So you'll get left behind. So that's maybe not an option. So then you got two remaining. You do stuff and you hope for the best. And, we're talking about ideas, and we'll come back to it shortly, I'm sure. But there's a saying, I think it was Mark Randolph, the co-founder of Netflix, who said, anyone who's had a shower has had an idea. But who's to say my idea is better than yours? So you have an idea and you run with it, hoping for the best. And where does that leave you? Well, you'll find out. And then there's another option, which I'm an advocate for, and I live in that world as do you, which is you have an idea and you try and get some validation for it. It doesn't have to be testing. It doesn't have to be an A/B test. Often it's not. Typically, when you're doing with innovative ideas, when you're dealing with ideas that are entirely new, that have not been done before, it's not going to be an A/B test. It's going to be some other form of validation, some early low friction, low cost form of validation. And you talk about data there, Valentin. Well, in those cases, there isn't any data. When you do optimization, in other words, you're taking something that's already there, it exists, and you're wanting to improve the performance of it, you've got data to work with. But when you're coming up with entirely new ideas, new innovations, there is no data. You've got to create that data. And so, and I think companies have to have a balance between those two. The horrible jargon, technical terms are exploitation and exploration, but you've got to sit on both sides of that spectrum. In other words, you've got to do optimization. You've got to take your systems that you've already got there in your experiences, and you've got to make them better. But you've also got to come up with new things.
I think we'll one thing to add here is the the common denominator, which I found that it works in large companies, because if we look at retailers, we have, let's say, two sides, and I touched a bit this subject in the last newsletter that I've sent to our audience. So we have within a retailer, a phygital retailer, let's say physical and digital retailer, we have two forces. On one end, we have the traditional retail force, which are maybe generating 80%, 90%, 70% of the total revenue. So they are saying, I mean, and we have extremes there, right? But we do have the conservatives, let's say, which states digital is just one small channel, which is going to be like this forever. And on the other hand, we have the e-commerce force, which is coming with a digital approach. They have more data. They can track actual customers, because the traditional retailers, all they do is put products on the shelves and wait for strangers to pick them up and to see revenue in the bank. So we have these two forces, and what I've seen for fact is that we have this alignment, this internal alignment, when we talk about customer lifetime value. Because if you have identifiable customers as a retailer, then you can look at what's the CLV for pure digital customers, what's the CLV for pure offline customers, which are using their freaking loyalty cards, and what's the CLV for hybrid customers. And every time we've made this analysis, every time the CLV was significantly higher for the ones which were buying online and through the bricks and mortar stores as well. And I think this kind of that's why this kind of data are, let's say, paving the way to a more open-minded leadership, which accepts new ideas and gets more creative about things. But without monitoring the customer lifetime value, without being customer-centric, without tracking what matters, then we have the old CFO way of defining success, which is revenue, profit, EBITDA, year over year, whatever. But maybe the loyal customers are churning, and maybe the company is not doing so as well as they thought it goes.
Yeah, and a really good way to do that, you referred to it earlier, is the RFM model. It's fairly straightforward. There's a lot of information out there. It's not difficult to do, and if you haven't done that, it's an exercise worth doing. And then, so we've spoken so far just about getting that level of visibility, surfacing that intelligence to you, so you can understand your customer profiles. But now you can do things like do some predictive modeling. So you can predict, for example, when you've done the basic LTV analysis, you can do some prediction about customers, when customers are most likely to buy, and how much they most likely to spend, even that level of detail. And you can then put clusters, create different clusters, depending on how they group together. And then you can map your marketing activities on top of that. So it becomes enormously powerful when you think about it in that way. And you use the term there, customer centricity. Well, it's become one of those terms. Everyone claims to be customer centric, but if you're not doing this, then you probably aren't customer centric. You think you're customer centric. And I've often said to people that do you know who your customer is? And if the answer is yes, then get out a sheet of paper and write down what you know about your customer. And then look at that. And if what you've written down is, demographics, where they live, how much they earn, gender, age, that sort of thing, then you don't know your customer. If you've got maybe some behavioral aspects there, like what drives them to buy from you, that sort of thing, then you're a step better. And you really only know your customer when you're able to put them into a specific bucket based on how much they're worth to you.
Yeah, I think it's music to my ears. And I think the old days when you and me and the marketing team got together into a room and we've said, let's define our buyer persona, are long gone. And if you remember, there were these research studies, these waves of research every 6 months, every 3 months. They were looking at the the data from the research institutes, but they were not relevant because they were analyzing a small set of data. Nowadays, we have actual customers with names, and with purchase history, and we can freaking look at who they are, what they are buying, how often do they buy, and we can look at this type of behavior patterns so that we can then add the qualitative layer. And I want to touch a bit this subject of the how enriching is to use other things than the pure numbers. How enriching is to go out there and to talk with the customers, because customer research has the quantitative approach but also the qualitative approach. And I want to have your take on this topic.
Yeah, and there's an over-reliance, is my impression. There's an over-reliance on quantitative. And quantitative is very useful. It's very important. We absolutely must do it. We must do more of it. But there isn't enough qualitative insights in my experience. And it's interesting that when I've spoken to clients and people in the industry about it, it's almost like there's a resistance to it. And I'm not sure why that is. But it's like there's more value attached to something that comes in numbers. And there's the classic distinction between the two. You will have heard that before, but it's worth repeating. A simple way of thinking about it is the quantitative data tells you what is happening. The qualitative tells you why it is happening. The other way I like to think about it is when you look at numbers, when you look at conversion rate, bounce rate, all these metrics that we look at in GA and other databases, it's really the reflection of human behavior, right? It's that number. It is the result of somebody doing something in your business, and you can't change that number. Conversion rate you cannot change. It is what it is. You're looking in the rear view mirror.
Yeah,
it's already that. You can't change it. What you can change is the human behavior that drives that number. Now, to change that, there's very little use understanding the numbers without understanding the human behavior, because that's what you have to change. And the way to understand the human behavior is to get into the minds of your customers and non-customers, also the people who haven't bought from you, because that's where decisions are made. And decisions is really what we're optimizing here. When you're trying to get more people to buy from you and spend more money with you when they do buy from you, it's all up here. It's not on your website. So, if you don't talk to customers, if you don't, and when I say talk to them, I mean literally talk to them, as in customer interviews, and that's an art and a skill on its own. But also surveys. There's different methodologies, but there's no shortcut for it. You have to. I think it was Steve Blank who said, "Get the hell out of the building. The answers are not in the building." And that's what he meant, is just get in front of your customers and speak to them. And going back to what I said right at the beginning of the call, how I got into this, that was the big watershed moment for me, is realizing there's enormous power in that simple act, and it's real.
I love it. And as you know, I'm a big fan of qualitative research. We have a whole chapter in the CVO Academy about understanding consumer behavior. We have Bob Moesta, which is one of the pioneers in the jobs to be done methodology. And what we also understood is how important is to do qualitative research on different RFM groups, and because that's going to explain why a behavior looks like it looks, right? But for instance, when you do jobs to be done interviews with the soulmates, let's say, like we call them the most loyal customers, you get one type of responses, because you want to influence the behavior of other customers, and you want to get in the minds of your best customers, because that's the best behavior that you can get. However, when you apply the same methodology and you look at newly acquired customers that have a high potential, which we call the new passions, so the highest recency, the lowest frequency, and the highest monetary value, then you get other different answers. So basically it's all about the differences, because the contrast creates meaning, and you need this kind of contrast. However, if all you are doing is to look into the quantitative data, you will be shooting in the dark with all sorts of creatives, messages, email campaigns, or whatever the heck you are doing. So I was having this chat with our head of data. We were looking at some reports, and he said, this freaking qualitative data research is even better than my whole process for 4 days. So basically, yep, that you have to blend them all together in order to understand what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to blend them. It's not one or the other. It's the two put together. And a really simple way to start doing it is by doing surveys. And there are two ways commonly today in online in which surveys are done. The one is on-site surveys. We've got the thing that pops up at the bottom of your screen or your page, and you ask a question. And then, of course, something like email surveys, which it's very easy to get insights at scale. But in that is the problem as well, because it's so easy to do. It's often done, and it's often messed up, and garbage in, garbage out. If you ask questions in the way that isn't in line with survey design practices, then the responses you're going to get back, it's going to be maybe even worse than flying blind. Without information, you're flying blind, but with misguided information, you're flying into the mountain. There's a lot to say about this. Not enough time on this call, and there are many books written on it. But a really practical tip that I can give you is, when you think about your survey questions, and the same goes for interview questions, but the two are different, then I like to have a column for what will I do with this insight. So if you ask a question and you get data back on it, what do you do with it? Because as I said right at the beginning, it starts with data. From data, you extract insights, but at the end, what you want is action. And each question has to justify its existence based on action.
I love it. I simply love it, because indeed there is a flood of surveys that you can see on all the website, and I think they are wrong by design. I mean, you can't do anything about this kind of response. And I wanna give an insight here. One of our first customers, they were running this CVO methodology. It's a large retailer from Germany, a direct-to-consumer retailer. They are selling mixes for keto diet pizzas and whatever. So they are really, really big into this gluten-free keto or whatever. And they wanted to run this methodology, and they wanted to ask some specific RFM groups about what stopped them from buying again for the ones that used to buy, what stopped buying again for the ones that used to buy very, very often, and what stopped what makes the current customers buy. And they came up with something like 28 different questions. And it was, they were like literally trying to bombard their audience. And what I do recall from that is that the most valuable question was an open-ended question regarding, tell us about the taste of our products. And they got, oh man, so much feedback. But the whole idea was that you can't fix a broken product with no amount of marketing and better pricing and better customer experience. So the product that they were selling for this pizza dough was simply not. They were having these adjectives, like it was really blunt. It tastes like paper. So when their leadership team got this, they could basically transform the recipe, because what they did was, was trying to make it even more healthy, so they got rid of more salt. So basically, they ruined their stickiness rate with this approach. So there are some trade-offs that you can do, and only with this qualitative research and well put questions you can make progress. Otherwise, you can bombard your, as you've said, you can fly directly to the mountain.
Yeah, I must say that most of the survey questions that I see, literally the most, I'm not exaggerating. I look at it and I have no idea how they'll act on it. And also, so a very common question, and that's a good one. It's one that I ask as well, is on the transaction confirmation page, is ask what almost stopped you from buying today. I think this is a question that Sean Ellis came up with almost a decade ago. It's a really good one. But if you ask that question, most people will say price. The problem there is that the buying decision, or the different decisions around purchasing, is made subconsciously.
Yeah.
And that response comes from the rational brain. And there's no way you can tap as a consumer into that subconscious. So price, it's an easy response. You've got to learn to read between the lines. And what really, you spoke about open text responses there, where really the jewels and the nuggets come out are in the tangents, the few words strung together, and you kind of, you put a few of them together and there's a theme that jumps out. In customer interviews, I've found the same thing, that one of the best techniques is to just let the customer go off on a tangent. The real insights are in those tangents. It's unexpected, it's unscripted, it's not in response necessarily directly to a question. You've got to create space for that. And those closed questions are also good, but again, you've got to have a balance, and you've got to understand the difference between the two and how they play together. And that's why you need to plot these things out in advance. And the place to start is not to say, what questions do I want to ask? The place to start is, what do I want to explore? What problems, what hypotheses do I have about what problems my customers have? Let's explore that hypothesis. What insight do I have that I want to uncover further? Let me go down that route, instead of just this blanket approach.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly important to come with the hypothesis first, and then to come up with the questions which will validate or invalidate those hypotheses, and then to come with, as you've said, that column with what kind of action can I make based on these responses. Shifting the gears a bit, Johann, I want to focus a bit on what makes what stops companies, from your perspective, to adopt this customer research. Because at the end of the day, if you think about it, while CVO is about doing customer research and then optimizing all the channels across the customer journey, CRO is about doing the same customer research. And it's a pity that you apply this only on the website. Those could be applied pretty well on the product, on the fulfillment, on the email, on other channels as well.
What stops him, I think, there are a number of reasons. And I think one of the big ones is people are in love with quantitative data. They love numbers. That's a big one. I think also that qualitative research is hard work. With quant, you sit down behind a computer screen and you spend a few hours looking at some data, and you create some pretty graphs. With customers, you've got to get in touch with them, you've got to recruit them, you've got to speak to them. Then you've got to interpret all of that data, you've got to make sense of it. It's open text, so there's a lot of reading to do. So it's a big investment of time. What I found is that once you've done it, or once you've done just a little bit of it, and you play that back to senior stakeholders, it's easier to get the buy-in. Those anecdotes really help to bring to life the numbers that stakeholders are looking at. And numbers are not the things that move people into action. It's stories. It sounds trite, but one of the best ways to tell those stories, ultimately it's all about your customers, is to let the customers tell their stories themselves. And a way to do that is through anecdotes. So I've seen real change in organizations when people have done this in a guerrilla way. So they've not been tasked to do it, they've taken it upon themselves, and they've started slowly, and they've woven in the anecdotes into their presentations, into the quantitative presentations. And then generally it takes on its own life from there.
The beauty of this episode is that we've touched so many aspects, starting with the mindset, the leadership, the what's wrong with the data, how to run qualitative how to do qualitative research. And I think one aspect that it worth mentioning is how do you adopt a culture of optimization within the company. Let's get away from the terminology, because at the end of the day, it's optimization, right? It's about improving what's already there with bright ideas based on real data from the customers.
Yeah, so optimization and experimentation, I would throw those two together. And I think it's a big question, and there's a lot of debate about this. And there are people who have spent decades looking at this. And for me, it comes down to two things, and it's oversimplifying it, but let me give it a shot. First observation is this doesn't happen without senior buy-in. You need top-level buy-in, but how do you make that happen? It also doesn't happen in one day. It takes time, and you've got to celebrate those small steps. Start small, take it one step at a time. It's an evolution over not months, but years. And if you are in a position where you want to influence, convince, persuade your senior stakeholders to be doing this or to be doing more of it, the way to do that is not to try and convince them. It's not to go and make a case for it. It's to use exactly, in fact, everything that we've spoken about today so far. Understand the world of your customer and act on it. Apply that same philosophy. Understand the problems, the pain points, the challenges of your senior stakeholders. Really understand their world. Understand what they're trying to get done, and then figure out how to help them achieve what they want to achieve through optimization or experimentation, and show them how it can help them. It's a very different conversation to trying to get them to do something called optimization or experimentation. What's in it for them?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and that's basically one. I've been struggling with pushing more enterprise companies to this type of processes. In my early days, I've been convinced that everyone should embrace this and everyone will do this, and that's going to be very easy. While, I don't know, 10 years later, I still look at the frictions and the resistance that the companies have towards embracing an optimization mentality. And one thing that I think you've touched beautifully is this thing. You need to understand that the groups are buying differently than individuals, and you need to understand what kind of struggles do they have as an individual in that role, in that position. What are their top priorities? And many times the good of the company is not also the good of that particular person on that particular role, because many companies are, let's say, forcing talented people to deliver some really dumb KPIs, to be honest, so they need to deliver this type of KPI, and that's their job. That's what they can do. And not everyone is good at persuasion, and not everyone can do this bottom-up change so that they can make the leadership team say, you know what, yeah, we've been wrong, we have to change this, we have to align ourselves or whatever. So at the end of the day, it's about finding the message which is compelling enough and which is aligned to the game plan that the leadership team has.
You spoke about KPIs there, and I think there's a dark side of KPIs which isn't spoken about enough. You got to remember with KPIs, what you're doing with KPIs is you changing behavior. You are motivating people to behave in a certain way because what you measure is what they'll do. And there are many examples, but one that I saw very recently, so it's fresh in my memory, is a client that had a KPI around social following. And so their social following increased massively, but it was all incredibly low quality followers. It was people that were nowhere near their target market. And so the kind of behavior that was incentivized there, was frankly the wrong behavior. So that's another episode on its own. But
Exactly.
you've got to think about what is it that you want your business to achieve. What do you want to focus on? And that question, the tail to that question, what do you want to focus on, is what do you not want to focus on? What do you want to exclude and say no to? Because you can't say yes to everything. And then you've got to construct your KPIs so that you make sure that you're focusing on the right stuff in the moment, and you're saying no to the right things as well, and that you are promoting the desired behavior by measuring the right things. It's very easy to come up with a list of KPIs, but what's the impact of that?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think also we have to see how we can wrap up this episode, because we are almost on the end of our time. So why don't you ask me and you the question that I haven't been so inspired, the last question that I haven't been so inspired to ask you?
You've got to help me out here, Valentin. What is that question?
Whatever. So basically, it can be anything that I haven't been so inspired yet to ask you out. Or if you have a message for our audience, you're welcome to do it.
Maybe I'll go back to ideation, because we spoke about that very briefly at the beginning, and I'll ask a question around that, and try and wrap it up in 2 or 3 minutes. The typical way in which ideation is done at organization is one of two things. Either you sit on your own and you come up with ideas in isolation, or you get together as a group and you call it brainstorming, and you kick around some ideas. And typically it's not brainstorming, because brainstorming is a very defined process that's actually a good process. It's been around since the 50s, but what we call brainstorming today isn't that. And what we know from the research is 3 things. The first one is that group ideation outperforms individual ideation, but there's a lot of small print there. The second thing is that groups working together in a structured, formal manner outperform groups that have no structure. And the third thing is that groups that combine the two, so individual ideation and group ideation, outperform, that's the best performance. So the way that's done is you get people together, you let them ideate in isolation on their own, and then you aggregate those ideas. And you get them to sketch their ideas instead of verbally expressing the ideas. And there are many reasons for this, and it's all based in science. But if you start doing that, you'd already be coming up with a lot better ideas. And sorry, the last thing to say is diversity is very important. Diversity and quantity. And that's the one thing that I think has stayed with us of brainstorming. We kind of understand that about brainstorming. One of the points of it is quantity breeds quality. And that's true. It's been borne out in research many, many times. So you aim initially to come up with a wide range of ideas before you narrow down. And there are good reasons why you do that. So if I can wrap that up and summarize to say that if you want to do ideation better, get groups to work together, but in a way that each person ideates on their own, then aggregate those ideas, and you get them to sketch those ideas, initially aiming for many ideas, and then narrowing it down. There's a lot more detail to it, but that's the basis. Are you on mute?
Sorry, thank you. So that being said, I already know that you're more active on Twitter than on LinkedIn. So if someone wanna get a hold of you, I think you're easier to find on LinkedIn. We also add the link to your agency on the screen. So pretty much that was it. Thanks a lot. It was a great conversation, and I'm sure that this is only the first episode. There are more things to cover, so maybe we'll do one again next year.
There's a lot to talk about. It's been fun. Thank you.
Excellent. So thanks a lot for watching us today. And that being said, we'll see each other in the next episode. Until then, optimize your lives and enjoy the ride.